And welcome to the VML, brought to you in association with NRG Series and sponsored by Wizards of the Coast and GLHF. Welcome. We are a 10-week-long Magic the Gathering Arena League showcasing the talents of amazing people of marginalized genders within the Magic community. We have started with a pool of 64 players, divvied up into 8 different divisions. A play is done in a round robin for 7 weeks. We cut to a playoff of the top 24. And we whittle our way down to a champion that we will be sending to a set championship. But before I get too far ahead, we are actually officially halfway through now. It is week number 4. And for those of you who haven't been here before, who don't know, my name is Nicole Callahan, also known as Lady of the Crease, joined here tonight by the phenomenal Arya Karamchandani, also known as Hogpog98. But you should know her if you don't. So this is our season 6 champion, an exceptional Magic player, and also an exceptional commentator. And it is a pleasure to be working with you again tonight, Arya.
Always a blast to commentate with you, Nicole.
How are you feeling this week? Pretty good?
Yeah, we're properly into the season. Like at this point, we're getting to the point where people are getting close to locked out for playoffs. At least if they're undefeated, at least in serious contention. We're getting to see who some of the strongest competitors are. People who just keep putting up results week after week, and I'm really excited to see who actually ends up qualifying for the next stage over the next few weeks.
Cannot wait. And there is a lot on the line this season. The prize pool has grown to $4,000. That will be split between our top 16. And we do have that the set championship invite, like you said, to our winner. And each round, there's 500 gems on the line to each winner. So each round win you get in the round robin, you get 500 gems into your arena account, which is a beautiful thing. And I know that we're halfway through the season, and it seems like maybe the standings are going to start to settle. But I wouldn't say that this standard format has quite settled. We have decks still just all over the map. It's so interactive. There's a lot going on from your mono white aggro. You saw a fall off in runes, but we're going to see a Gruul aggro deck later that I'm a little stoked about. We have Jeskai Storm, Rakdos Sacrifice. So it's awesome. Standard seems awesome and healthy right now. Do you have any thoughts about the format?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what the format's evolved to. I definitely think the bannings with Epiphany, Divide by Zero, Faceless Haven have made the format much better because we're seeing a lot more diversity even among archetypes. Like there have been times in the past where there'd be like a controlling deck and a mid-range deck and an aggro deck, but there's not much of a second best controlling deck or a second best aggro deck. But like this week, the matches we're looking at, it's not just different types of archetypes. The decks themselves are drastically different, even if they fill the same role in the metagame, and that's really cool. That makes play seem really novel and interesting. Like even your 20th, 50th match of standard you're watching or playing, because there's just so much different happening every game.
Oh, I love it. Definitely a signal of a healthy format. And so I'm ready to dive right in here. We're actually going to start in division number 8. We have Emmaskyeward and Wyatt. We're going to take a look at Wyatt's side here. They brought Esper Control this week. With the new Planeswalker, Kaido, what are your thoughts on this list?
This list looks strong, particularly going into what their opponent is playing. Something of a spoiler there. Decks like this are really, really well situated to just play against control decks with a lot of board wipes and a lot of efficient answers. Decks like this were a little beaten out by control decks in the past few months because the Galvanic Iteration, Unexpected Windfall, Alrund's Epiphany package is really hard for any controlling deck to ever keep up with or go over the top of. But with Epiphany getting banned, it's really interesting to see these like not quite creature-based, but like planeswalker-based control decks that look to affect the board with things like the Wandering Emperor and Kaito and Lalt, try and like play a more controlling game that plays to the board as opposed to a game like the Izzet Epiphany decks where, they just generated a bunch of mana and then eventually comboed off. This is a very novel playstyle that I think is really powerful against some of the creature-based decks.
And speaking of creature-based decks, on the other side of the table, we have Emmaskyeward with mono white aggro. It's the creature-based deck. What do you think about this matchup?
Mono white is perhaps slightly awkward as a choice in this matchup. It's a really powerful deck that might struggle a bit against just the sheer amount of board wipes. Historically, mono white has been pretty good against, say, the blue red decks. But one thing mono white does struggle a little with is just a bunch of hard board wipes the way Esper Control has, with Wyatt having access to 3 Doomscar in the main, 1 in the sideboard, 2 Meteor Massacre in the main. There's just a lot of ways to interact many for 1 with Mono White's board, as well as to trade 1 for 1 with the more annoying creatures like Talia or Elite Spellbinder or Luminac Aspirant. Mono White is perhaps still better situated against Esper than Mono Green or another creature deck might be. The tax effects like Talia and Elite Spellbinder do work very well against the board wipes. They actually give the deck some counterplay, but still not ideal against a deck that is built essentially to prey on creature decks.
Right, and we do see that Emma did try to put the 3 copies of Brutal Cathar and 3 copies of Skyclave Apparition all on the sideboard, so kind of preparing more for a creature-less matchup. So we'll see how this works out as we head into our first match, Division number 8, Emmaskyeward on Mono White Aggro versus Wyatt on Esper Control. We will be watching from Wyatt's side on the bottom here. Emmaskyeward on Mono White will be on the top. And any thoughts on these openers? Looks like both hands will be a keep.
The openers are fine, maybe highlighting something of an issue for the Esper deck here, where even if post-board, the Esper deck is probably favored because it's just like a sheer magnitude of cards that are good against mono white, including these board wipes. Game 1, like those Kaitos, those check for traps, those are cards that you really don't want against mono white. They don't affect the board efficiently, and you can't kind of just fall behind. So definitely not ideal. And this hand highlighting some of those vulnerabilities, but again, Doomscar off the top, showing why, all told, probably still a good matchup for Esper.
Yeah, Wyatt looked like checked for traps there, took the Elite Spellbinder, which left Emma with triple Hopeful Initiate, which is kind of funny because they don't work too well together. But so kind of just a few 1-2s coming across, and Doomscar here, knowing about the Valorous stance in hand. So Emma is able to save 1 of the initiates, but just 3 cards left in hand.
Yeah, a really good heads-up play from Emma, I think, though. Emma could have run out the Sun Gold Sentinel from hand, try and get more power into play, but she knows that the only Fortel card in Wyatt's deck, I believe, is the Doomscar. And just recognizing that and leaving up the Valorous stones rather than letting herself get 4 for 1.
No, that's very well played, as we see Kaito Suzuki hit the battlefield on Wyatt's side. That was a big player. I know the Pro Tour was at a different format, but we saw a lot of Kaito last weekend, and he seems to be starting to make a splash in Standard as well. Do you think Kaito's star is on the rise, or?
Yeah, definitely. Kaito's definitely a card that was perhaps underexplored previously. Cards like Kaito is a niche of Planeswalker we haven't seen that much of recently, but has the ability to be very powerful. And I mean, Alchemy is, save for the fact that there's no Goldspan Dragon, a more powerful format than Standard. So if he's good enough to see play there, I wouldn't be surprised if he's good enough to cut it in Standard as well.
Oh, and we see Crawling Barons here, not becoming a creature, getting some counters there. The land being able to cast Wandering Emperor for Wyatt this turn, hoping to stay alive at a low 7 life already.
Yeah, the neat thing for Wyatt here is that they have 2 different ways of stabilizing this pod. Not only can the Wandering Emperor come down, kill something, gain some life, but if things change, if Emma had, say, fired up that land and wanted to get like large attacks in, there would have been entirely possible for Wyatt to just Infernal Grasp Talia and Vanishing versus another creature, so clearing 2 creatures from the board, and having both those options is really powerful for them in this spot.
Yes, as we see Wyatt opt for the Wandering Emperor that will come down. Also a card that's been a big hit in across formats in the past week. So definitely making a splash. See, take care of Thalia there, and it does exile. So That 1/1 ninja will jump in front of the hopeful initiate, and Wyatt will take 3, but oh my goodness, Doomscar. Quite a draw. Emma empty-handed. Does have the Crawling Barons in play. What do you think Wyatt's hesitation is?
I think the hesitation likely comes from the fact that in this spot, Emma is representing activating a creature land post the Doomscar, and if you make, say, a 1/1 to chump block with the Kaito, then yes, that could trump block the Crawling Barons, but I believe there's a Cave of the Frost Dragons in the left corner, and that represents a 2-turn clock that isn't easily interacted with by or blocked by the Planeswalkers.
So we'll see. So Kaido does hit the bin to make another ninja, and it looks like Crawling Barons will be the choice here to get in as a 4/4. Going for face, just ignoring the Emperor, needing to block with that 2/2 ninja, and Bankbuster the draw here.
Yeah, Bankbuster's a pretty strong draw. It's just more cards in the spot, which can allow Wyatt to eventually take over the game, while at the same time providing a blocker, which is also important for Wyatt to not die over the next few turns.
Yeah, speaking of, there is the one of Legion Angel in Emma's list. So there will be a stream of angels over the next few turns unless Wyatt can do something about it.
Yeah, Legion Angel, definitely the best draw for Emma in that spot. It's the only thing that would give her a chance of keeping up with the card advantage out of the Esper deck at this point. But likely still not going to be enough. It's a little inefficient, and these 3 removal spells in Wyatt's hand are going to be hard for Emma to beat.
Yes, as we see, Usher of the Fallen is the draw on Emma's side. Going to move to attacks first and still going upstairs. No interest in trying to take out that Wandering Emperor. So Banishing Verse going to exile the first of many Legion Angels, and another one hits the battlefield, searching up another friend, and followed up by Usher of the Fallen. So being able to double spell here, probably an important turn for Emma.
Yeah, definitely. This is the one way that Wyatt perhaps falls behind, particularly given all their removal spells are Infernal Grasp, which cost life. It's possible that well-timed sort of interactions, like some blocks or creatures that line up poorly for Wyatt, could lead to them losing this game. But quite possibly still not going to be enough, particularly given the fact that Emma's only running the 3 Legion Angels, 1 in the main deck and 2 in the sideboard, I believe. So there isn't notably the 4th Angel for her to search up in the spot.
Yes, that is the last of the Legion Angels, as we see Cave of the Frost Dragon activated here. Infernal Grasp going to take care of that as Wyatt falls down to 2. But Emma is at 13, and this Samurai token keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, Cave of the Frost Dragon, slightly annoying there. I'm sure Wyatt would have rather been able to spend Soul Shatter rather than the Infernal Grasp, which puts them all the way down to 2. But given that there's this other Wandering Emperor in hand, I don't think it matters that much because Wyatt has the ability to gain some life at some point, so they're likely safe.
Yes, and this is a big attack for 8, and Usher the Fallen needing to chump block there, so probably not a good spot for Emma to be in. Wyatt probably pretty happy with where they are right now.
Yeah, I think Emma's one hope in this spot is that Wyatt just doesn't have any other interaction the Legion Angel can get that.
As we see Soul Shatter taking care of that last Legion Angel, going to crew up Bankbuster, and that would be lethal. So game number 1 goes to Wyatt on Esper control as we move to sideboards. And let's see, looking at Emma's sideboard here, Maul of the Skyclaves, and looked like she was considering Maul of the Skyclaves when the Skyclave apparitions came right in to take care of perhaps those pesky planeswalkers or bankbusters and things like that. Any other cards that you see that you like here?
Emma's bringing in both the copies of Guardian of Fate, and I think that's going to be incredibly important in this matchup. Wyatt's deck boost board has 6 board wipes, and without Guardian of Fate, Emma's going to have a really hard time beating those, particularly given there's nothing like Faceless Haven to rely on to close out the game. and options like Crawling Barrens and Forgive the Frost Dragon are likely to slow a lot of the time. It's also worth noting that you mentioned the Skyclave apparitions coming in, and those are perhaps a counterintuitive choice since you generally don't want to bring in Skyclave apparitions against controlling decks. But Wyatt's deck is very much a controlling deck that plays to the board a lot, so you definitely want to bring in apparitions to be able to answer, like you said, those bank busters, but also the Wandering Emperor and Kaito. Kaito perhaps not staying in, or there's some chance it might come out, but Wandering Emperor is still something you got to deal with.
Yes, as we see, Emma has a pretty sweet curve to start off here. So Usher of the Fallen and Hopeful Initiate both on the battlefield, a few 3-drops back in hand. But Wyatt's starting with 2 sweepers in hand and a Meathook Massacre and a Doomscar, also drawing Wandering Emperor to start things off there. So we'll see who can get ahead or who can stay ahead here, as Elite Spellbinder are going to take a little peek at the hand.
Yeah, and unfortunately, no way for Emma of knowing what exactly Wyatt's hand looks like without the Spellbinder, which leaves her slightly poorly positioned against the Foretold Doomscar, where she had no way of knowing whether playing out the Redain would have instead prevented her board from getting wiped this turn.
Yes, as we see, Hive of the Eye Tyrant on Wyatt's side, and that Redain will come down here. Elite Spellbinder are going to take another look and find just a Wandering Emperor among lands. So that Wandering Emperor now costing 8. So
yeah, probably not coming down anytime soon.
Most likely not. And Emma seems to be in a pretty good position here, as long as she can keep Wyatt's hands clean. And it looks like just a single Infernal Grasp, which is, the 1-for-1 removal that I don't think Wyatt really wants in this situation.
Yeah. Though in this spot, the Grasp killing the Redain lets Meathook Massacre be cast for 2 here and wipe Emma's whole board, so it was a fairly important draw. Even though perhaps it's not the thing Emma was most afraid of here.
Wow, yeah. And we see the one of Legion Angel back in Emma's hand, but no 4th land to be able to cast it. So just a Guardian of Faith. And I'm not sure Emma exactly wants to cast a Guardian of Faith aggressively in this. It's not really kind of filling its role to protect from sweepers here.
Yeah, at the very least, she probably wants to wait until Wyatt's end of turn so that they can't kill his main phase with a removal spell. But yeah, definitely just a vanilla 3-2 is not what that card's supposed to be doing. And particularly given, well, I believe Guardian of Faith has Vigilance actually, so it's at least safe from the Wandering Emperor after a fashion, in that it can't kill the Guardian. But Wandering Emperor coming down, making a 2/2 token that immediately trades with the Guardian is definitely not what you want your 3-drop to be doing, because you still have a 2 loyalty Wandering Emperor left, and you can still use that to -2 and kill a creature, or just make more tokens to put counters on them. And that's just not a position from which the mono white deck can easily come back.
Oh.
Hi, so this is your producer, Phoebe. I want to let you guys know a little bit about what's going on in this particular instance. Emma had a client crash, actually, shortly after this. But during the wait, Wyatt actually did something. And the match that I present here to you in this pre-recorded match is the official match results. So just be advised of that. Thank you. This has been the disembodied voice of Phoebe, and thank you. How are you guys doing, Arya? Nicole, you guys okay? Comfortable?
Yeah.
You got enough water?
Yeah. Oh, I got my water right here.
I have to feed and water my casters here. That's vitally important.
We appreciate you taking care of us, Phoebe.
Yeah. try remember feeding us every day, though. This every other day isn't working.
Picky, picky, picky.
Yes, that was Phoebe, our producer. She is phenomenal. If you aren't following her on Twitter, why not? Her name is Code Indigo, so look her up. On Twitch. Excuse me, I said Twitter. I have Twitter on the mind. I got it Twitter pated in my Twitter brain. But Code Indigo on Twitch. Make sure you give Phoebe a follow. And we'll be looking at game number 3 sideboards here. And it looks like you were right that Kaido seems to have been shaved here entirely on Wyatt's side.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. It's not great against mono white just because it's the 3-drop that doesn't affect the board very meaningfully. The 1/1 it makes not exactly a great blocker against mono white, and you really don't want to fall too far behind on board. Not impacting the board on turn 3 is definitely one of the ways you can just immediately lose this match. So it makes sense that it was shaved in favor of things that more directly play to the board.
All right, and we are getting into an exciting game number 3 here. It looks like Wyatt will be on the play. And let's take a look at these hands. It looks like Wyatt going to ship back their 7 for a 6 that is flush with removal.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense to bottom the Farewell there. Farewell's fine as a good late game top deck. It clears up the board completely, makes sure there's no like recursion of any sort against decks that have a lot of that, but not the early board wipe you want against mono white, particularly when there's things like Elite Spellbinder in their deck. And if you just have a Farewell in your opening hand, at some point they hit it with Spellbinder, you're never casting your Farewell that costs 8 mana. That's just impossible.
And a very important check for traps here, going to reveal Emma's hand of 4 lands and Wandering Emperor. So Wandering Emperor going to bite the dust there and just drawing another land for turn. It is, again, the seat of the Empire. So a useful land perhaps, but a land nonetheless, and probably not what Emma wanted to see here. But a healthy attack for 5, bringing Wyatt down to 13, followed up quickly by a Meat Hook Massacre. So I'm going to pop back up to 16 life with a clear board heading into turn number 5. So I feel like Wyatt probably feeling pretty good about their position right now.
Yeah, if I were to pick one player, I'd want to be in Wyatt's seat here. Just being at a stable life total, having several cards on mono white. This is kind of the ideal situation. March of Otherworldly Light, notably, unlike similar cards, does hit lands. It hits creature lands. It just cares about whether the thing's a creature, an artifact, or enchantment. So it actually really efficiently hits the Crawling Barrens here, letting Wyatt still draw a card for turn. And yeah, they're just miles ahead here. Very far ahead on cards, not a low life total, and the deck just plays better in the late game.
Yeah, wow, what a turn. Being able to play Bankbuster, draw a card off of Bankbuster, and take care of the creature land that Emmaskyeward had in play. Another creature land going to hit the battlefield here. Guardian of Faith, the draw from Emma's side. But slowly slipping away, this game seems to be, as Wyatt considers Wandering Emperor there on the end step, but decides to go against that.
Yeah, which makes sense. Wyatt is perhaps recognizing that in terms of cards, they're just miles ahead. They're winning this game anyway. There's zero reason to apply pressure. What the Wandering Emperor does is it provides a removal spell, which they don't have at the moment. The way they lose is to an unanswered threat that grows out of control. And so recognizing that the Wandering Emperor does a good job answering such a threat means that it is almost certainly correct to hold it rather than spending it to make a 2/2 when there's no real reason to apply pressure here.
Right. We see Wandering Emperor taking care of that Cave of the Frost Dragon, Guardian of Faith, like you said earlier, having Vigilance, so no opportunity to take care of that one there. But one of the other reasons Wandering Emperor is so good, it comes down after attack, so it never gets attacked. So not at least until next turn.
Yeah, and it does an excellent job protecting itself here in conjunction with the Reckoner Bankbuster token, because even if that Lalt hadn't been drawn, a counter could have gone on the 1/1, which then blocks the Guardian. If that 1/1 was killed, then that 1/1 could have crewed a Bankbuster, which then blocks the Guardian. So there's just no way Emma is ever getting in at either of the Planeswalkers here.
All right, we see Guardian of Faith going to get in here after Adeline is played, making a token. So the token will go after Lolth, looking for, maybe some trades here or to look for trades from Wyatt's side, but Emma, having the Aganjo in hand, will see what she decides to do.
Yeah, in this spot, Emma's kind of priced into using the Aganjo. She doesn't really have anything else she's doing. She's gotta hope that Wyatt maybe somehow runs out of cards, but that's gonna be hard to do with 2 planeswalkers and play a bank buster that's gonna draw a bunch of cards, just like a ton of resources. The game is very close to over for Emma, unfortunately. This is what the Esper deck does best. Just interact 1-for-1 or multiple for one with creatures and just take over the game with planeswalkers that bury the creature decks in value.
Now that Vanishing Verse, a very clean answer to Adeline, as well as a third Bankbuster is also played. So all of the cards Wyatt could possibly want, they can have as they draw a multiple of Loath, making a blocker here, and just sitting pretty, honestly. Looking pretty good.
Yeah, I've definitely heard people not so high on Reckoner Bankbuster as something that's neither the most efficient card draw spell nor the most efficient threat, but it's looked really impressive in this game. Just being essentially a Maze Mind Dome that very notably puts out a blocker at the end. And really effective against creature decks as a result out of these mid-range decks, just letting you completely take over the game.
Yes, and see, Thalia drawn and played on the side of Emmaskyeward, but Adeline gonna hit the dust here. Portable Hole, a nice clean answer also for Thalia. So looking like it's just a matter of time here as Wyatt draws so many additional cards. They are just going off.
Yeah, I don't know what a sequence of draws from Emma could even look like at this point that would give her a chance at this game.
Yeah, and it looks like getting in with the Vigilant Samurai, gonna get across. Oh, excuse me, not gonna get across because Iganjo, last card in Emma's hand, going to deal the 4 damage to the 3/3 token. So Emma dropping down to 12 off of Meat Hook Massacre, and a land is the draw here. And there's definitely a bit of disparity between the two sides of the battlefield here.
Yeah. I believe at this point, Wyatt is up by something like 4 cards and 2 planeswalkers and like 5 creatures and like 4 lands. And I have a hard time imagining Emma coming back from the spot. There's all these dead planeswalkers being drawn, these dead board wipes being drawn, but it just doesn't matter because Wyatt's so far ahead.
Right? It's like, well, I don't need another Lotha. I don't need another Doomscar or 2. But, I guess it's like the insurance policy for your insurance policy in case something happens here. But it looks like, yes, at this point, Wyatt just could hit random buttons and probably get through the game.
Most likely, yeah. I suspect Wyatt could spend 2 turns not taking any game actions and likely win.
We'll see. This is an attack for lethal here. This is an attack for 13 with Emma at 12. And the Vanishing Verse before blockers, taking care of that 1/1 to make this a clean victory on the side of Wyatt, who will take this match down 2-1. That was quite a match to start things off with.
Yeah, really, really just powerful performance from a deck that's pretty unique and hasn't shown up much in standard before. Esper Control definitely held back by the Epiphany decks, like we mentioned earlier. And yeah, a new spin on the archetype with a bunch of Neon Dynasty cards, looking really, really powerful from Wyatt there.
No, it was definitely a powerful performance from Esper Control for sure. And speaking of powerful, I asked a lot of on the slides this week, we asked our players what they thought the most powerful card in Standard was, and I got a lot of Goldspan Dragons back. A lot of people saying that dragon is dominating, and we're about to take a look at that dragon in action in our next matchup. We have flying on Jeskai Storm, and you can see right there, first row, first column, Goldspan Dragon, got to play the full set, and just surround itself with even more powerful cards like Unexpected Windfall, Behold the Multiverse. And any thoughts on this list?
Yeah, I mean, Goldspan, this is a deck that really abuses Goldspan Dragon. And not the alchemy version of Goldspan Dragon either. This one's using every part of the Goldspan Dragon. The extra mana from the treasure from attacking, and very much the extra mana from being targeted, because the way this deck combos off, so to speak, is targeting Goldspan Dragon a bunch of times with Show of Confidence to generate a lot of extra mana. And Goldspan Dragon really, in some ways, a defining card of the format. going into the Pro Tour, I remember some people discussing whether Standard or Alchemy was a more powerful format. And Alchemy has all these extra cards, but this Jeskai Storm deck was cited as the reason Standard was maybe a more powerful format, just because Goldspan Dragon in its current form is so defining of the format. And the ability to just have a threat that lets you combo off and generate mana in a way that there isn't really an equivalent of in Alchemy.
Yeah, and we've had the pleasure of watching this deck win both combo and not combo on stream here before. And we'll see that Flying is playing the combo, but they're only playing one copy of Show of Confidence. So just the sheer power of Goldspan Dragon and the treasures and just like being able to, just like combo with the cards it's surrounded with. It doesn't even have to be an official, like, quote unquote, like 2-card combo. It just goes off.
That's part of the power of this deck, is that almost all the cards in the deck are just good cards on their own. Show of Confidence aside. Every other card, just good, efficient cards. And Lier, Unexpected Windfall, Galvanic Iteration, just frequently enough to take over the game. Flying's something of a veteran with this deck. I've seen her play it a lot. I've seen her play it very, very well. So would trust her judgment on there being one copy of Show of Confidence and the recognition that maybe this deck doesn't need to combo that reliably. You just need card advantage and value, and you eventually kind of kill your opponent somehow or the other. Maybe by comboing. Does it really matter? Sometimes you just hit them with a bunch of Goldspan Dragons.
Gotta love it. And speaking of Goldspan Dragon, let's take a look at the other side. We've got Kayla DMTG with Izzet Control, and there you go. Again, first column, first row, just right there. Goldspan Dragon, full set. A little bit of a different list though, like you had said earlier. A lot of these cards, a lot of standard decks, it's just like Izzet, but it's a different play on Izzet. Is it Control? There's Izzet Combo, but it's I feel like there's like there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. Like, is there really a wrong way to play Goldspan Dragon in your Izzet deck?
Not really.
We're looking at, a few more, a little more concentration on like sweepers. I see Burn Down the House and some Cinderclasms and things. A little more concentration on counter spells maybe, but definitely still some very powerful cards. Celestis in there, so a lot of good stuff. Any thoughts on this list from just looking?
Yeah, it's a more, I think, traditional take on Izzet. The combo deck is a somewhat new innovation pioneered by CFT a few weeks ago in a PDQ they won. Whereas Izzet Control in some form, Alrund's Epiphany or not, has been around since the dawn of time, it feels like. And it's very good at punishing other controlling decks. Just Iteration plus Windfall is a good card advantage engine. Hullbreaker Horror providing an end-of-turn threat plays very well against counter spells. And that's what this deck does really well. It'll be interesting to see who comes out ahead of these two Iteration Windfall strategies, because Flying also mentioned that she expected this matchup, and she still chose to bring the Goldspan Dragon combo deck. So she seems confident in her deck's ability to keep up against a blue-red control list like this. So I'd be interested to see how it actually plays out.
Yeah, and we're about to dive in to this Division 4 matchup. It is Flying on Jeskai Storm versus Kayla on Izzet Control. So let's take a look. We'll be watching from the side of Flying, so she'll be on the bottom of our screen on the Jeskai Storm deck. Kayla will be on the top with her Jeskai Control. And look at that combo in hand, right? This is done, right?
Yep. What more could you need? Goldspan Dragon, Show of Confidence seems like an easy keep to me.
Yes, we will see Flying keep her hand and kick things off here. Double Expressive Iteration. That card has been real good in Standard as well. Among other formats, Expressive Iteration, definitely a very, very powerful card.
Yeah, it's not had much of a time to shine in Standard for a little bit. In the Iteration Epiphany Mirrors, it was very awkward to tap out on turn 3 to play Expressive Iteration, because that left you vulnerable to an Unexpected Windfall. And that's definitely the case in this matchup, but it's this matchup specifically, and that's no longer 60% of the Standard meta. So Expressive Iteration is safe to play once again.
For sure. As we see both players foretelling some cards here, Flying probably happy to see that they have drawn a couple of lands to kick things off here. So, and she has access to all of her colors as we see a Spiked Field Cave come down on the side of Kayla, and Behold the Multiverse going to be cast here, revealing Island Spike Field Hazard on the top of the deck. And looks like it will be a keep.
Yep. And really interesting aspect of this matchup we're seeing here, where Kayla played a tapped fourth land, and that let Flying tap out for her tap down for her Behold the Multiverse, recognizing that Unexpected Windfall is not a threat there, so it was safe to tap out at end of turn. Generally speaking, in this matchup, you can't afford to tap out at end of turn just because Windfall is such a threat.
Now, that end of turn Spike Field Hazard, was that to sort of, check for traps, like to see if there would be a response from Kayla's side?
It was more because Flying recognized that she could not afford to tap down main phase on this turn. There wasn't going to be an iteration cost. There wasn't going to be any sort of card advantage spell that could be interacted with. And at that point, she had 8 cards in hand. If she didn't do anything on her next turn, she'd just be discarding the hand size. So might as well get 1 damage at Kayla.
Oh, I like that. And as we see a Behold the Multiverse and a bottom from Kayla. So the exact opposite that we got to see Flying as she topped. Kayla bottom, 6 lands in play though, and just the pass of the turn, still with a card in Foretell.
Yeah, this matchup is very much one which you really don't want to blink first because the answers are so much more efficient than the threats mana-wise. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see just many turns passing with nothing happening except maybe a card advantage spell at end of turn sometimes. In fact, this match has already been impressive in that there's been, 2 spells cast, 3 if you count the Spike Field Hazard. Is that an expressive iteration too? That's so many spells in this matchup. You'd frequently see get to turn 9 or 10 with 0 spells having been cast. So really, this is an unprecedented amount of action.
Well, it looks like Flying is ready to start things off with a Goldspan Dragon into 6 open mana from Kayla. She has 5 cards in hand, and it was a saw it coming in the Foretell zone. So Kayla gonna deploy that, take care of Goldspan Dragon number 1. We know Flying has another in hand, so she's still set up. And yeah, it was definitely interesting to me to see that Flying has held on to both of these expressive iterations.
Yeah, it's just tapping down for a card draw spell is often not something you can afford to do because you're going to need to interact at end of turn and then interact again on that turn. And also because sometimes you just need to represent certain sorts and types of interaction at particular times.
And speaking of, Hullbreaker Horror is the play here from Kayla's side. That's a big one. Also followed up by Goldspan Dragon.
Yeah, horror definitely scary here. It's a card that Flying's deck's gonna have a hard time beating. It's just good against counter spells. Divide by 0, notably not a card in standard anymore, and just kind of leaves Flying in an awkward spot in terms of actually having answers to it. And once it's down, just anything trades effectively, like a Spike Field Hazard bounces, a Goldspan Dragons. It's really hard to keep up on mana once there's a horror in play.
Yes, and we see the Dragon's Fire trying to take care of this Goldspan Dragon before it can attack. Kayla making a treasure off of that, so has access to 5 mana as we wait to see if Kayla has any answers.
Yeah, and looking at this game, the Hullbreaker Horror is going to be hard for Flying to answer. She's never really winning a fair fight against that, so what she's doing here, letting that Goldspan resolve and looking to interact with it immediately, is knowing that even if, say, Dragon's Firing the Goldspan isn't the most efficient, trying to put herself in a spot where she taps Kayla fairly low on Kayla's turn, and then untaps and just wins with a combo kill.
Yes, and we'll see this expressive iteration revealing a galvanic iteration, a land, and another expressive iteration. So the land, we played this turn, galvanic iteration to the hand, an expressive iteration, revealing the 1 Fading Hope in the deck.
Yeah, and I mean, that's very easily the best hit for Flying here. She really wants to get that Hullbreaker Horror off the board. No 2 ways about it.
Yeah, let's see if she is going to be successful here. Won't get the scry, even if it is successful, but...
Yeah. And it's worth noting that both of these decks have their own way of going over the top that the other deck can't really deal with. Kayla's deck has this Hullbreaker Horror, which Flying's deck literally does not have answers to. The Fading Hope only a temporary answer. But conversely, Flying's deck has has Unexpected Windfall plus Galvanic Iteration, which Kayla doesn't have access to. Kayla has Windfalls, but no iterations to copy them with, and no iterations to copy counter spells with to interact with the iteration. With Flying's copied Unexpected Windfall with iteration. So both of these decks capable of going over the other in some way that is unique to them, making this really interesting balancing act for both players, trying to play around opponents' threats that you don't really have an equivalent to, but have some alternative to.
Yeah, it looks like Flying very happy there to cast that Unexpected Windfall from the extra lands that Kayla was able to give off of that Field of Ruin when taking care of this Hall of Storm Giants. So Valorous stance looking to take care of this Goldspan Dragon.
Yep. And this is that exact spot we talked about a turn or two ago, where Flying wants to bait Kayla into tapping down so that she can combo off. So here Kayla is incentivized to use the treasure of Goldspan Dragon to cast Horror while she can still generate true mana off each of those treasures. And this leaves the door open for Flying to just slam Goldspan Dragon. Though she did need to draw some sort of way to get card advantage off it, which she does not have right now.
Yes, it looks like Galvanic Iteration, the Jawari Disruption, and Show of Confidence the hand, besides a Riverglide Pathway. So needs some sort of, so it needs the gas to put in the car. So
yeah.
We'll see. Flying is at 13, now down to 6. Kayla having the option to activate Hall of Storm Giants there and declining to do that.
Yeah, I think Kayla playing safe, playing around something like another Valorous stance, knowing that if she taps down to activate Hall and then Flying in response, Valorous stances the Hullbreaker Horror, then the game's likely over. She's letting Flying untap with a Goldspan Dragon and multiple treasures and like 12 lands. It's very unlikely she wins after that. But with this line, she's playing it safe.
Needed some gas. There's Unexpected Windfall, the draw for turn on Flying side. So she's probably pretty happy to see that one.
Yeah, Windfall, very easily the best draw on her deck in this spot.
We'll see Galvanic Iteration and Galvanic Iteration once again. Getting ready to make multiple copies of this Unexpected Windfall. Hoping to draw lots and lots of cards.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether Kayla opts to interact with a couple of these iteration copies or interact with the Goldspan, because while on surface level it looks safe to interact with these iteration windfalls, what that would do would be allow Flying to play Goldspan and then use Show of Confidence to get back the mana that's lost off those windfalls not resolving.
And now Kayla does know about the Goldspan Dragon in hand. Kayla having a card in Foretell, but only one saw it coming in the main. So we're pretty sure it's not that one.
Yeah, and in this spot, I think Flying is kind of priced into Goldspan Dragon and just hoping it works out. If Kayla has interaction and uses it on the Goldspan Dragon while it's still on the stack, that's probably just game. But Flying doesn't really have much of an option. I suppose is that I missed that Otawara among the lands. That can be used to maybe buy her a turn, but the Hullbreaker Horror plus the Hall of the Storm Giants means that Kayla is almost certainly just going to have lethal extend, so she needs to go for the Goldspan Dragon and hope there's not hope that interaction for the Goldspan Dragon happens while it's in play rather than on the stack, because at that point she can protect it with Sijuria Shelter and generate mana in response with Show of Confidence.
Yes, and Otawara was one of the draws from the Unexpected Windfall. So we'll see a pause at the Spikefield Hazard, Fading Hope, going to be cast here. Hullbreaker Horror wanting to return a treasure. So Flying looks happy to sack that, make some white, casting Show of Confidence onto the Goldspan Dragon.
Yeah, so what she's doing here is just generating enough mana in response to just recast the dragon if she wants to quite easily. So at this point, bouncing the dragon just doesn't do anything. And it's fairly clear from the speed at which things are resolving. Kayla doesn't have anything else. She's not getting priority, so she's out of spells to cast in this spot.
Yes, so it looks like Sujiri Shelter will come down, protecting that Goldspan Dragon from blue. So Fading Hope unable to do anything. Spikefield Hazard will ding the Goldspan Dragon for 1. Expressive Iteration here, revealing a negate and 2 lands, and looking pretty good.
Yeah, Flying still an awkward spot where she doesn't actually have anything that prevents her from dying here with that Hullbreaker Horror. She can bounce the Hullbreaker Horror with Otawara, but that does just leave her dead on board to... Oh, she has the Goldspan Dragon. So she's dead on board to... Which I missed as Vigilance because of Show of Confidence. So she's dead to any interaction on her dragon with the Hall of the Storm Giants, but that feels fairly unlikely to happen given the negate in hand.
So it would have to be a well-costed spell as well, since Hall of Storm Giants costing 6 to activate, and then itself would only have 3 mana left over on Kayla's side. So she's mulling over her options right now, seeing what she can do.
Yeah, Flying's still an awkward spot against just that Hullbreaker Horror in hand. If Kayla goes play that Hullbreaker Horror and bounce the Goldspan Dragon, that could have left Flying in an awkward spot.
It's like Disdainful Stroke to take care of that burn down the house, and Kayla's options are shrinking here, only access to 5 more mana, and that will do it for game number 1. Flying will take that one down on a Goldspan combo here, and we're going to move to sideboards, take a look at what we've got. Let's take a look at Flying sideboard here. We've got some Smoldering Eggs, Cinderclasm, Flame Blessed Bolt, Dragon's Fire, Test of Talents, Disdainful Stroke, and Fading Hopes. Any thoughts here?
I would imagine all the counter spells are definitely coming in. So Test of Talents and Disdainful Stroke, those immediately coming in. She may or may not choose to bring in Smoldering Eggs as a cheap threat. It's quite powerful against Kayla's deck for the most part, but is quite soft to Hullbreaker Horror, so definitely a give and take. Notably cutting the Show of Confidence, because like in that game, you don't really need to combo off. You're not going to kill the blue-red deck in 1 turn through all the interaction. You're much more looking to just play a value game and eventually win. I believe Kayla's deck does not have Lier, and that's the way the blue-red deck has to go. The combo Jeskai Dragon combo deck has to go over the top, and that combined with the iteration Windfall to just generate a bunch of mana in a way the blue-red deck can't really deal with, is how Flying wants to be winning this game, rather than combo killing in 1 turn.
Yes, you are right. Flying, she has 3 copies of Lear, but Kayla with 0 does have 2 copies of Malevolent Hermit. One of them we see hitting the battlefield here.
Yep. Hermit, definitely awkward for Flying in this spot.
It's a good attacker and a good insurance policy against any big hijinks that Flying could cause.
Yeah. Sometimes a gamble against the blue-red deck, particularly on turn 2, because Spikefield Hazard can be quite annoying against it, but Kayla recognizing that she doesn't have a better play on turn 2, and if Flying doesn't answer it on turn 2, she's just going to fall so far behind. So just recognizing that and playing it out, forcing Flying to have it, and she didn't have it, and now Flying was behind.
Yes, as we see, Flying's hand does have a copy of Lear, a copy of Goldspan Dragon, 2 copies of Valorous Stance, a Disdainful Stroke, and a Galvanic Iteration, along with a Pathway. But not really able to do anything so far, and there's a copy of Spikefield Hazard.
Yeah, it's a lot less good once the Hermit's once there's mana untapped to go with the Hermit, because unless there's a tap down, the Hermit can always be sacrificed in response.
but guard went down, and that unexpected windfall is going to be taken care of by Disdainful Stroke, as the Spike Field Hazard also takes care of the Hermit. So Flying able to clean up things nicely there. That was a good turn of events for Flying.
Yeah, in a spot like that, it makes sense for Kayla to go for the windfall, knowing that if she draws a Goldspan Dragon, then she can really punish Flying for that. Just casting a large threat that Flying can't deal with is going to put her very far ahead on mana. But she ended up not finding the Goldspan Dragon. At that point, she's pretty far behind on cards. But something of a risk you have to take in a matchup like this.
Yes, as we see Kayla able to look a little deeper into the deck with a Deluge and Goldspan Dragon, like you said, coming down, hitting the battlefield on Kayla's side. Going to come across for 4, bringing Flying down to 12. And Flying also missed a land drop here, something that I feel like you don't really want to do in this matchup.
Yeah, you can't really afford to miss a land drop in this matchup basically ever. The reason people play like 27, 28, 29 lands, including the DFCs in this matchup, is specifically so that you can make land drop after land drop after land drop in the mirror to when you're behind. And so even with that essential 3 for 1 or 1.5, 3 for 1.5 with the Spike Field Hazard and the Disdainful Stroke trading for the Hermit and the Windfall, Flying was still quite far behind the second she missed her first land drop. And notably, in the early turn, she only had a bunch of pathways, no actual dual lands, and that meant she had to choose between having access to double blue for the Lier, double red for the Dragon, and having access to Valorous stances in her hand. And she opted to play the colors that are more likely to come up early, but definite cost to that with a hand with double Valorous stance, because it leaves her without an actual answer to Goldspan Dragon or a Hullbreaker Horror.
Oh, Hullbreaker Horror hitting the battlefield here. Monsieur Le Pinchy, ready to lay the smackdown, and this would be just short of lethal. It's an attack for 11 with Flying at 12, so down to 1. Is there a way to come back here?
I'm having a hard time imagining there is. Kayla has access to another 2 cards off that Deluge, which lets her dig pretty deep into her deck. So yeah, not surprising to see Flying scoop it up there.
Yes, and so that was a swift game number 2. We'll be heading to game number 3 between these two players, battling out from Division 4. We have Flying on Jeskai Storm and Kayla on Izzet Control.
Yeah, so really, really smart and heads up play for a choice from Flying there, seeing a remove that one expressive iteration on the draw and then putting it back in on the play. On the draw, you can't tap out on turn 3 to cast iteration or tap down on turn 3 because that lets your opponent on their main phase of turn 4 just resolve a windfall. But on the play, you can just play iteration freely on turn 3 because your opponent's just going to have their turn 3 next. So Flying recognizing that and boarding in the iteration on the play and boarding it on the draw, which is really heads up play from it.
Yeah, we see a solid start with a Behold the Multiverse in Foretell for Flying already, and being able to hit at least the next few land drops. Behold on the upkeep. I like the timing here. Forcing Kayla's hand a little bit. Jawari Disruption going to take care of that.
Behold on the upkeep, guaranteeing that she'll be able to resolve an unexpected windfall is excellent. She definitely doesn't want to do it main phase because then that just leaves Kayla with untapped mana on turn 3. But at the same time, if she does it on Kayla's beginning of turn, there's not anything that Kayla can punish her with for tapping out because she doesn't have 4 lands. She can't unexpected windfall on her turn.
We see Expressive Iteration, a good draw here from Flying, who's hoping to find a land drop, and we'll find 2 in an island and a river glide pathway. Going to take the pathway to hand, and the island, so going to guarantee land drops for this turn and next, while being able to hold up some counter magic here.
Yeah, really strong discipline choices from Flying, recognizing that she doesn't need a threat. She has the 2 Liad. She's ahead on mana. All she needs to do is make sure she keeps hitting her land drops and she can just interact with Kayla 1 for 1 and win the game.
Yeah, and we'll see Test of Talents taking care of the Behold the Multiverse. Going to nab the one on the library, one from the graveyard, and then being able to take a look through at, see if there's anything, funky going on in the deck. Battle of Frost and Fire in there. The hand. If anything, maybe the most important thing is to know what Kayla has in hand here.
Yeah. The knowledge of what's in Kayla's hand, really powerful. Also really good to look at Kayla's deck and know that just you don't have to worry about things you do and don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about Behold being an instant speed form of card advantage anymore. And also, you do have to worry about Battle of Frost and Fire, which is not something Flying may have expected because you don't generally want to keep board wipes in this matchup. But for Kayla, Flying has Smoldering Egg, she has Liaz. All her threats get hit by Battle of Frost and Fire. It also provides card advantage later. So it makes a lot of sense for her to have left it in.
Yeah, so guard can be up for Flying as we see Goldspan Dragon get disdainful stroked from Kayla's side, and going to draw and go back to turn as Kayla attempts to cast her own Goldspan Dragon, which will also be disdainful stroke from Flying side. So back at parity, and we'll see Lear hit the battlefield.
Yeah. Some really strong play from Flying here in just recognizing that she doesn't actually care about whether her Goldspan is resolved. She doesn't actually care about landing a threat. Knowing that she has a 2 Liaz in hand and that 2 extra mana, she can eventually use that to get card advantage. So deliberately running her Goldspan to a counter spell, forcing Kayla to spend her 1 piece of interaction on that so that the Liaz can resolve, is a really strong play.
We'll see unexpected windfall from Kayla's side, playing a Hall of Storm Giants, making a couple of treasures. And Galvanic Iteration looks to be the play here on Flying side, following it up with an unexpected windfall as well of her own.
Yeah, Iteration plus windfall from the...
Oh. I was just saying, so, so nice, got to do it twice sort of thing? Okay.
Yeah. Iteration plus windfall from the graveyard is just very hard for Kayla to beat, because when you're doing it from hand, yeah, you're copying the windfall. Sure, that's 4 extra mana, which is fantastic, and 2 extra cards or 1 extra. You're trading in 2 cards and you get 3 cards and you're getting 4 cards. So that's powerful, but it's only so much. It's not gonna get you all your mana back or anything. From the graveyard, you're spending 0 cards or 1 card you're discarding from hand, and you're getting 4 cards and 4 mana. That amount of value is just impossible to keep up with basically anything in standard.
Yeah, I mean, Flying seems to be in a pretty good spot here, even with the unneeded counter spells in hand and in the graveyard, but that Fading Hope in hand to be guards up against anything like a Hullbreaker Horror. And Goldspan and Lear are going to be chipping away at Kayla, who's down to 13 life already.
And I imagine Flying is considering either disdainful stroking the windfall and then Fading Hoping her own Lear in response to allow the stroke to resolve. Or another thing she could do in a spot like this is Test of Talent's a particularly scary threat, recognizing that, yes, that windfall will resolve, but future windfalls will not. Because you get to exile all of them still.
Interesting thought as we see the one of Otawara into hand again. As we saw that do a good job kind of keeping the battlefield clear in game number 1.
Yeah, very good at interacting with something like Hullbreaker Horror in a way that can't be dealt with on the stack. And notably, the Liar in play makes that Valorous stance a very good answer to the Hall of the Storm Giants in play, because having Liar in play means spells can't be countered, including by Ward. So Valorous stance just deals with Hall of the Storm Giants for 2 mana. Nice and clean.
It's a beautiful thing. As we see unexpected windfall from Flying. Just an absolute wealth of resources here on Flying side. Kayla, thinking about her choices here, doesn't seem to be able to do much. Tajiri's Shelter is the draw, as well as another Goldspan Dragon. So this can be an attack for 11 here.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine Kayla coming back from this spot. Flying just has so much mana, and there's all the answers for anything Kayla could do.
We'll see a Hullbreaker Horror coming down here. That Valorous stance Nice, clean answer. Taking care of Hullbreaker Horror as Kayla is tapped out. So all of that damage would come across, and Kayla says that is enough. There is no coming back from this, and we'll see flying on Jeskai Storm take down Kayla on Izzet Control 2-1. Good games to both of our players.
Yeah, the really impressive back and forth from both players. There's some really solid plays. A lot of things I didn't see coming myself. Just both these players demonstrating they're really good with the archetype.
Super impressive play on either side, and congratulations to Flying for taking it down. I don't know about you, but I am ready to keep on keeping on, and we have a very similar deck coming up in our next matchup where we move up to division number 2, and here we go. Jeskai Storm, show of confidence, Goldspan Dragon, but I see some extra turns in this deck.
Yeah, so this is a more traditional version of Jeskai combo, if you will. Definitely the version I'm more familiar with and have played by myself. A deck that's much more capable of combo killing just because you have the Alchemist Gambits as another way to win, rather than just having maybe the one Kazul's Fury as an out or no outs to actually end the game. If you draw a bunch of cards with Goldspan Dragon, you just pass the turn and then like eventually win with the trillion cards you have. This deck's much more conventional in that like it's when it combos off, it actually kills you. But same basic philosophy. Iteration plus Windfall gets you a lot of cards and mana, and Goldspan Dragon lets you get frankly absurd amounts of mana, sometimes combo kill, and just go off and get ahead in a way that few decks can keep up with in the late game.
I'm just saying, who doesn't love drawing a trillion cards? Because that's the team I'm on.
Yeah. I suppose I'm more of a have your cake and eat it too girl. I like to draw trillion cards and then also combo kill my opponents. But I can certainly see the appeal of just instead of winning, just drawing more cards.
It's like that meme where it's like win the game or draw 20, and you're just like, nope, I'm gonna draw 20. This is great.
Yeah.
And I'm here for drawing cards and eating cake. All right.
Yeah, and I suppose that comparison perfectly sums up the other version of Goldspan, where
I feel like there's
why
a better
win when you could just draw more cards?
There's got to be a better deck name in there than Jeskai Storm. There's got to be a fun cake name, Cake and Dragons, something.
I'll try and think of something before the next time I'm on coverage.
That sounds great. And let's take a look at Aura's opponent this week. Aura will be taking on MightyLinguine and Rakdos Sacrifice, a deck that we haven't seen too much. I feel like it like felt like it was on the precipice of breaking out, and then it was like, yeah, nope, never mind. Like I haven't really seen much of this archetype, but it seemed very powerful with cards like Nicole Anvil, and an experimental synthesizer, but I haven't really heard much from Rakdos lately.
Yeah, it's a deck that's felt like almost good enough a lot of the time. There's a lot of new pieces from Neon Dynasty. Like half this deck is new cards. I'm seeing at least like 20 new cards in this list from Caroline. And that's definitely made the deck something that needs to be found rather than an established deck. Like, Izzet controller, even the Jeskai Goldspan combo, a lot of that shell was already in place, whereas people have been experimenting a lot with the shell to try and find versions of it that actually work out. But definitely a lot of powerful cards. The ability to have a reach in the end game with Oni Called Anvil and Meathook Massacre that a lot of decks, particularly the blue-red decks, aren't particularly well equipped to deal with, because you're trying to win not by getting in damage with creatures that they can interact with, but just small pings from artifacts and enchantments that most decks aren't all that well situated to interact with, particularly since Divide by Zero got banned.
Yes, as we see, and some of the cards to watch here. Unfortunately, Caroline not running any copies of Go Blank, which she believes to be the most powerful card in Standard right now, but it would be really good in this matchup. So maybe Caroline should reevaluate before her matchup next week. But for now, let's check out this week's matchup: MightyLinguine on Rakdos Sacrifice versus Aura on Jeskai Storm. We'll be watching from the side of Aura on the Jeskai Storm deck, and MightyLinguine will be on the top with Rakdos Sacrifice. And let's take a look at these openers.
Yeah. Just fairly reasonable openers for both sides. Nothing super impressive. I mean, for the dragons, for the Jeskai Stormside, you want a hand that just lets you play spells in the early game and go big. The red-black deck doesn't apply pressure all that quickly, and so you really just want to get to the mid-game, like cast one Windfall and just combo kill them. And the red-black deck's not really going to be able to do anything about that, and you just don't need to worry that much about interacting before then, because it just don't kill you fast enough. But that said, particularly post-board with a bunch of duresses, the thing that can be problematic from the red-black deck is just a decent clock and interaction. So makes a lot of sense to mull what is, like, at the surface a pretty decent hand, but very soft because it doesn't actually have any interaction for Caroline. So heads up play to mull that initial opener.
Oh, and we see Caroline having the option here, going to give it a shot. Deadly Dispute to sacrifice a blood, try to make a treasure, draw some cards with Jawari Disruption, going to take care of that from Aura's side pretty quickly. And another land, the draw for turn from Caroline's side. Now that Blood Fountain is very slow and isn't really providing any value for Caroline quite yet. Would you think that it could possibly, looks like it may be, Deadly Dispute fodder as well?
Yeah. What Blood Fountain does really, really well for this deck is just be 2 artifacts for 1 mana. Like, the text on the Fountain might sometimes come up, the text on the Blood might sometimes come up, but given that you have a bunch of Deadly Disputes, a bunch of Oni Cult Anvils, for the large part, it's just fodder to sacrifice.
We see Soren coming down on the TheMightyLinguine side, making a 2/3 vampire. Shajiri's Shelter was the draw here, looking like that's going to be the 4th land drop on the side of Aura, but coming in tapped. So not many options in what to do at this moment. Can't cast anything like a Windfall quite yet. So Soren going to do its best Dark Confidant impression and take a look at the top card, which is a Voldaren Epicure. Going to pay 1 life, and TheMightyLinguine will put that one in hand.
Yeah, a slow start definitely for Aura, in that, well, she missed her 4th land, which is not ideal. She had a turn late, and it's a tap land too, so she's not casting Windfall towards her turn 6. But that said, Caroline's draw this game has just not looked fast enough to really keep up with this. Like, she's going to be putting a few tokens into play. She's going to start to get her engines going, but against this hand that Aura's got, against Unexpected Windfall into Goldspan Dragon plus Lier, TheMightyLinguine has maybe 1 turn left to kill Aura, and then it's quite likely that I'll just be able to combo off and win. And she can possibly do that through removal too, because the Valorous Stance will protect the Goldspan Dragon. Then notably, it won't protect the dragon from that Blood Tithe Harvester in play, because that doesn't destroy, it gives -4/-4 on the spot.
Yeah, and it looks like Aura going to draw a multiple of Lier here. So needing to Unexpected Windfall and also discarding one of those Liers to try to find a 5th land. And she will do so. A Spiked Field Hazard and a Storm Carved Coast. TheMightyLinguine did her best to put some action on the battlefield, but will it be enough? Being able to cast the Epicure, the Harvester, and the Synthesizer all last turn, as well as playing a creature land in Hive of the Eye Tyrant. And Deadly Dispute goes very well with Experimental Synthesizer being the draw here.
Yeah, another thing worth noting is that Spike Field Hazard that Aura drew is actually a really, really good draw, because it lets her take an extra turn next turn. What it lets her do is Goldspan Dragon, attack for 4, make a treasure, that's 6 mana, and then Spike Field Hazard her own Goldspan Dragon to get the 7th mana to cast a Cleave Alchemist Gambit, at which point she should be able to win the next turn, making similar plays with Lier and Spike Field Hazarding her own Goldspan. So a pretty good spot drawing that hazard for turn, or off the Windfall. And Caroline kind of needs to do something this turn to avoid just, if not dying, then falling very, very far behind on mana and possibly board state as well.
Nice. And it looks like channeling Sokenzen, the Crucible of Defiance, to make a couple of 1/1 spirit tokens with haste. So TheMightyLinguine deciding the way that I'm going to win this game, if I'm going to win it, is to get into the red zone now. So Spikefield Hazard will take care of that Voldaren Epicure to some of the damage coming across. Still a pretty healthy attack for 7 to bring Aura down to 10.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this Rakdos deck very good against conventional control decks. So we saw it's been a little slow applying pressure here, but against a deck like we saw earlier from Wyatt, like an Esper control deck, in those spots this Rakdos deck is much more powerful. You see it getting its whole engine set up, and it's just going to kill you in a few turns. There's not really much you can do about it interaction wise. It's since it's reaches through through a bunch of non-creatures, but slightly less strong against something like this deck, just because the deck has more of a combo finish.
Yeah, and it looks like Aura happy to attack the Sorin, taking care of that, and pass the turn back to MightyLinguine, who has 7 power on board. Then a Hive of the Eye Tyrant as well.
Yeah, if MightyLinguine chooses to go for it here, then Aura is just dead on board. But also knowing that if there's a removal spell of some sort, then this is her whole turn wasted, leaves her in a spot where it's a little hard to just go for it in this spot.
Yes. MightyLinguine, although, is also still just kind of looking at 5 lands in hand and saying, like, maybe it's not going to get much better. We'll see what she do.
I think the plan was to dig for removal off that synthesizer, and she found it off in Infernal Grasp. Unfortunately for her, Aura has a Valorous Stance in hand, and I've got to imagine the game is over here, because even without any combo nonsense, Aura can attack for 4. It will have 15 mana after attacking with the gold spend, and then use that to go Galvanic Iteration, Flashback Galvanic Iteration, Alchemist Gambit, take 3 extra turns, and I have a hard time imagining a fail to win from there. In fact, just with the gold spend in hand, that should be enough.
And there's a little extra removal on the side of Aura as well in Dragon's Fire in case anything needs to be cleared, which it doesn't look like it will need to be. Galvanic Iteration going to be cast first and perhaps second as well. We'll see what she decides to do here.
Yeah, just even without the attack, Aura has the ability to take 3 extra turns and likely win the game here. Given that the gold span in hand, in fact, just definitely win the game. There's no real two ways about it.
Yes, and
even
it looks like
even her most conservative lines just definitely win in the face of Caroline having nothing in hand.
Galvanic Iteration going to copy the cleave cost of Alchemist Gambit. Blood looking to find a removal spell. MightyLinguine does find a removal spell, but it's a power word kill. So that makes things a little bit awkward.
Yeah. Perhaps not the best removal spell against this deck, where the only thing it hits is the Lier, which generally has already taken over the game by the time it comes down. So, not ideal.
Not at all, as that Goldspan Dragon does get across for 4. And it's Aura's playground here. What does she want to do? It looks like casting Goldspan Dragon sounds great. Can't really do much. MightyLinguine almost entirely tapped out. Just a couple of treasures there as the Goldspans get across for 8. Still a couple extra turns happening after this. So MightyLinguine down to 11.
MightyLinguine, 2-time VML champion, just one of the best players I know. I would be very impressed if even she managed to get out of this alive.
As we see Aura, just an embarrassment of riches. Land, more treasures. Got a Leer, Spikefield Hazard, sure. Got it all.
Yep. She still has another extra turn coming up after this.
Yes. And an entire graveyard to take a look at. Those unexpected windfalls looking pretty nice.
Yep. And I believe at this point she's just digging for something that a show of confidence to actually combo kill with, than the game this turn itself. But regardless, whether she ends it this turn or takes another turn, I can't imagine she loses this one.
MightyLinguine did it. She was able to use her power word kill. It didn't work because there's a Valor stance, but
Yeah, and this is the problem with power word kill against even Lier in this deck, is that when Lier comes down in a deck with 3 shelters and Valor stances, it's probably going to be able to protect itself.
and it did that job quite well, as another unexpected windfall gets cast here. Spikefield Hazard and a couple of lands in hand, so Aura no problem discarding a land. Going to draw another land and a Dragon's Fire. Dragon's Fire, pretty clean answer to that Samurai, if need be.
Yep.
Also has a Dragon's Fire in the graveyard, so just like I said, just an abundance of resources and things to do.
Yep. And I believe Aura just has lethal this turn without even needing to take the next extra turn. She can just Spikefield Hazard face, then cast a one from a handed face, and then flash it back, and that's exactly 11 damage for lethal.
3 mana bolt.
Honestly, there are few ways more fun to win with than just Spikefield Hazarding your opponent for lethal. It's just, it feels so perfect, you know?
It does feel good, as Aura does come across for 8, while MightyLinguine is at 8, so she will take down game number 1 here. Wow, as we move to sideboards, this Jeskai Storm deck has been looking super impressive.
Yeah, just solid performance after performance after performance, and you've got to wonder at this point if maybe the people talking about how good this deck are, well, it was right. It's not just a powerful deck, it's not just good enough in standard. Maybe this is the deck that's going to end up defining standard. Maybe this is just leagues more powerful than anything else we can see. There's definitely counterplay to it, but right now, with people notably not backing their Go Blanks since Epiphany's been banned, a deck like this can definitely be hard to keep up with for like other slower strategies, particularly.
Yes, and we see the like this Jeskai Storm deck also having different iterations. Like I said before, you just can't, there's no wrong way to do it. Like it looks like you're wanting to play Lear, wanting to play the Alchemist Gambit, wanting to play the extra show of confidence, only one show of confidence, totally cut my show of confidence depending on the matchup. It looks like it's just so powerful. The pool of cards that you're picking from are so powerful. It doesn't look like there's a wrong way to do it.
Yeah, just the engine of Goldspan Dragon plus Unexpected Windfall is just so strong that honestly you could frequently win with that in a ham sandwich. It doesn't really matter what half the cards in your deck do, as long as they pair reasonably well with those, just because Goldspan Dragon is so powerful. And then when, rather than playing, like, you could win with a pile of like green cards in addition to those, and when instead of that you're playing more interaction, extra turn spells to really leverage a Goldspan Dragon, Show of Confidence to combo, various other things, those strategies are just really hard to keep up with in the mid to late game for other controlling decks. Aggressive decks sometimes still reasonably positioned against this, but other controlling decks just frequently left behind by the raw card and mana advantage of like the iteration Windfall Goldspan Dragon package.
So as we see now, let's take a look at MightyLinguine's sideboard as well. We see those duresses could not have come in any faster.
Yeah, and some really spicy sideboard tech from her with that Cemetery Gatekeeper. Not a card we've seen much of in Standard, mostly the purview of older formats where there's things like fetch lands, but definitely very strong against Dragon combo. The deck cannot combo kill you unless it answers the Cemetery Gatekeeper. And more than that, even in the mid game, the deck is very much looking to just play a decent interactive game and just cast card draw spells, spinning its wheels, digging for the combo. And so if you have a Cemetery Gatekeeper in play, then suddenly you can't just spend 3 turns casting Expressive Iteration, Unexpected Windfall, because you just take so much damage and fall behind.
Yeah, it looks like MightyLinguine also was moving entirely away from the Smelter package. Had originally taken out all 4, now is looking at just 3 and maybe leaving in 1 Meat Hook Massacre instead.
Yeah, definitely not an ideal spot for the MightyLinguine when there's just so many guys that don't line up particularly well against the combo deck. Power Word Kill notably staying in as an answer to Lier because it's more efficient than the other things out of her sideboard.
We'll see. Mighty Linguini, as we had said, she was cutting all 4 of the smelters, and then she ended up cutting all 4 and keeping in 2 meat hooks instead of just 1, and there were 2 in that 7-card hand. So looks like a mulligan down to 5 to kick things off for Mighty Linguini, as Aura, happy with her 7, going to keep again a pretty nice curve there. Smoldering Egg, seize the spoils, and double unexpected windfall.
Yeah, and this is kind of exactly what you want to be doing in the early game in this matchup. Unlike in other creature matchups, you don't want to be interacting early. You just want to be spinning your wheels, generating treasure to combo off, just knowing you can go over the top and this deck doesn't apply much pressure. So just Egg is an early way to hold down the fodder threat that the Mighty Linguini is forced to interact with, plus just Treasure Maker and card draw. Treasure Maker and card draw is kind of ideal. Also, the Mighty Linguini's hand, double Voltage Surge, Onicult Anvil, not ideal on a multi-5 because all those cards need other things that they work with.
Yes. When there's more removal in the Mighty Linguini's hand than there is in Aura's hand. Mighty Linguini probably not feeling too great here. That Voltage Surge would be able to take care of the Smoldering Egg next turn when able to make a red mana and sack that blood Tithe Harvester made, not wanting to sack it to the sack Anvil to the Surge, because that might be one of the engines that'll get her back in this game.
Yeah, Surge plus Anvil is definitely powerful though for the Mighty Linguini in this spot. I think really heads up play from her there, not sacrificing the blood to get a 1/1 token and drain Aura for 1, just knowing that if that 1/1 token gets interacted with, she's back to not having artifacts. But as long as she has that blood around, she can sacrifice the blood to Voltage Surge. That'll kill the Smoldering Egg. That'll get a 1/1 that can, on future turns, be sacrificed to Anvil. And you can just get that loop going, start generating value, turn all the Voltage Surges in your hand into essentially hard removal spells, and start applying some pressure with Blood Tithe Harvester. So Harvester, one of the best draws in our deck, and part of what makes her shelter strong is that you can have these hands that don't really do anything, and then things like Blood Tithe Harvester generate a body and an artifact or multiple artifacts, and just really get your whole engine going in a way that's hard to interact with for opponents, making traditional control decks at least really struggle in spots like this.
So we'll see it. Synthesizer the draw on Mighty Linguini's side. So another card that goes very well with Onicult Anvil. But we see on Aura's side, the engine's already humming over there. Smoldering Egg with 3 counters on it, able to cast the Unexpected Windfall and flip it for that Ashmouth Dragon, starting even as early as next turn. So gonna have to answer that one on Mighty Linguini's side, and it looks like that's where she's going to start.
Yeah, definitely awkward. She'd love to be able to play that Synthesizer and dig for a land. Land would be excellent in this spot. It would allow her to keep playing at a reasonable pace. But she kind of has to answer that Egg, and yeah, while that Egg's answered, the Windfalls in Aura's hand probably going to take over this game sooner or later. And even if not, she's just going to get really far ahead on card advantage, with there being nothing really that the Mighty Linguini can do that's applying a meaningful amount of pressure to her here.
We'll see the expressive iteration. Finding that land, a Dragonfire to hand, so a little 1-for-1 removal in Aura's hand now as well. Considering perhaps which side of the land to play?
Yeah, I'd imagine as much. Also, possibly just looking through her possibilities for the next turn. Whether or not she wants to remove the Blood Tithe Harvester main phase to prevent its being sacrificed to something like a Deadly Dispute, or leave up a Jawari Disruption, seeing as Mighty Linguini's stuck on mana.
Oh, and taking advantage of that, knowing that Mighty Linguini has missed land drops, so that must mean that she's got three spells in hand. So wanting to stay above that, and it looks like Riverglide Pathway will be the play and a pass back of the turn, and it is a land for Mighty Linguini. It is a black land, but it is a land.
Yeah, and that plus the ability to look for a red land off the Synthesizer, look for another cheap spell to cast. Pretty decent for the Mighty Linguini here. With that Onicult Anvil maybe sacrificing the Synthesizer, Mighty Linguini can go and start looking towards maybe having more, just having more tokens, right? Because sacrificing that to the Oni Cult Anvil will just give another token at some point if she chooses to do that, and let her actually start building up her board rather than just looking to keep the board even with the Anvil and really abusing the ability to start going up cards each turn.
Yeah, and a really awkward draw, unfortunately, off of that experimental synthesizer was a second experimental synthesizer with no red mana to speak of. So, but speaking of a red mana on the side of Aura, we're looking at a Goldspan Dragon. Able to cast that, doesn't even need to play a land first, just gonna get in. Looks like we'll play a blue pathway after the fact, and Infernal Grasp is going to be cast from the Mighty Linguine side. But in making that treasure, Jawari Disruption is going to protect the Goldspan Dragon. So Infernal Grasp, not going to happen. Not today.
Yeah, and letting that Goldspan Dragon attack is definitely awkward for the Mighty Linguini, because now, sure, she can Voltage Surge and attack Golds and try and kill the Goldspan, but casting that Surge gives the Goldspan Dragon trigger, and once there's 2 treasures in play, you can spend those 2 treasures to cast Windfall, and then you can get 2 more treasures off of that Windfall, and just keep doing that until she's through all the cards in her hand. So she gets to look 6 cards deep here, for either an answer to this to protect her Goldspan in the form of something like a Valorous Stance or a Sejuri Shelter, or just another threat that can take over the game next turn.
Yeah, oh, and there it is in the first one. Don't even need to dig any deeper. Sejuri Shelter going to be in the top 2 cards of the library off of that first Unexpected Windfall. So able to protect that Goldspan Dragon once again. Mighty Linguine is at 16 or at 13, but Mighty Linguine with not as much of a battlefield to speak of, just a Cemetery Gatekeeper in hand and no red mana. So unfortunately, as of right now, Mighty Linguine unable to cast anything, including that Oni Cult Anvil that was put into exile off of the synthesizer. As the 1/1 artifact's going to get in, though, bringing Aura down to 12.
Yeah, and Aura's pretty firmly ahead at this point. Mighty Linguini having mulliganed and had like a slow start. The blue red deck's very good at going over the top in the late game. Yeah, those Behold the Multiverses just going to get us so far ahead on cards to pair with the mana advantage that it's going to be hard for the Mighty Linguini to come back. Definitely possible. The deck has a lot of reach, and she wants to do something like play that Cemetery Gatekeeper and hope there isn't removal for it. And that something like that might put Mighty Linguini behind because of the fairly low life total she's at.
And it looks like Prismari command a backbreaking spell against this red-black sacrifice deck, being able to kill 2 things for 3 mana, 1 card. But it looks like Aura's going to actually had originally gone with 2 damage, but decided to create a treasure token instead and still destroying the Oni Cult Anvil here. So still a very powerful play from the side of Aura.
Yeah, and with that, and the Beholds in hand, and the one Fading Hope in hand to answer the Protector if needed, it's hard to imagine the Mighty Linguini coming back from here.
Doesn't even want the second Goldspan Dragon, saying, you know what, nope, just give me another Unexpected Windfall. I'm going to cast this one too.
Yeah, I think at this point, Aura is just digging for something like a Show of Confidence or Leah to actually close out this game. Still notably not too late for her to find a Show of Confidence because she gets another treasure off attacking with the Goldspan. So like if she wanted to, she could Behold the Multiverse and then after attacks cast Show of Confidence. But Leah is off the table at this point, so it makes sense to foretell the Behold and pass.
Yeah, and it looks like after a little bit of digging, Aura just going to get across for 4. Mighty Linguine going to drop down to 13. Drawing Sorin for turn. Unfortunately, still stuck on 3 lands. Cemetery Gatekeeper, the only option for Mighty Linguine at this point. And it looks like that will be the play. Cemetery Gatekeeper, a 2/1 first striker. Let's see what she's going to exile.
Yeah. She can definitely get a couple damage here at least off exiling an instant, but Fading Hope meaning there's definitely not chains of damage happen. It's no Idol of the Great Revel in this spot. Definitely just going to be answered immediately, and leave Aura free to cast as many spells as she wants on the next turn. She gets to look several cards deep, and if she finds something like a Lier, the game's just over.
Yeah, and it looks like being able to, or how about 2?
Yeah, 2 Liers probably does it as well, though. Second one, maybe not all that necessary even.
So we see Lear and Expressive Iteration both joining the hand on the side of Aura, and wow, that is a lot of cards.
Yeah, that's all for unexpected windfalls. So at the bare minimum, Aura's going to be able to look at 8 cards without spending a single mana.
That
And
is
then we
a
get to the
lot.
point where she gets to actually start generating mana with stuff.
Now, it looks like Aura only playing 1 copy of the Show of Confidence in this deck. The question is, are we going to find it? Is it still in?
Only the 1 copy of Show of Confidence, but the 2 copies of Alchemist Gambit, and that's also probably enough to win the game, since she can maybe use things like Spike Field Hazard and Galvanic Iteration plus Windfall to go up on mana.
Mm.
So a lot of ways to get ahead on mana, and Alchemist Gambit likely sufficient to win the game. There's a Spike Field Hazard, so that gives her the ability to copy a Windfall now, and that actually puts her up on mana. And I have a hard time imagining she doesn't win this turn, but you never know.
Well, we will see. It looks like I'm going to keep on windfalling. I can't even tell what's in the graveyard and what's in the hand anymore. There's just so many cards.
Yeah, Leah does that with this deck particularly. Sometimes in the late game, you'll have essentially 25 cards, 30 cards in your quote-unquote hand, and it's kind of impossible to manage everything. Luckily, in spots like these, it doesn't really matter what you cast. You just cast like one of the many spells.
All right, just make sure you don't try this on mobile.
Yeah, that probably is not likely to work out.
We'll see Galvanic Iteration being cast here, followed up by a Behold the Multiverse. So now we're gonna like vet the draws before we see them. We're like, all right, we're not gonna just blind draw. I'm gonna take a look before I add these cards to my hand. Shajiri, Shelter, and another Pathway. There's another Leer and a Flame Blast Bolt, both bottom. Don't need those. Taking a look, and there it is.
Confidence. So that should be the game here. I think Aura may have just actually cast enough spells already this turn. This might just be lethal on its own. It might not even need to be flashback or any extra turn stuff. I think this is probably just lethal. I've got to imagine Aura has cast the requisite 8 spells before at this turn.
There were a lot of spells cast this turn on Aura's side. Unfortunately, all the TheMightyLinguine can do is sit back and watch the show of confidence here. As Goldspan Dragon making so many treasures. That's a lot of, yep. All those counters. Vigilance, who needs vigilance? Take vigilance after I attack. That's a show of confidence.
Very much so. And I believe this is exactly 13 damage. That's perfect.
That is exactly lethal. Didn't need to do a single other thing. Good games to Aura for taking that match down 2-0. A little rough on the mulligans for TheMightyLinguine, but hey, it's week 4. There's still plenty to go, and good games. A very impressive showing from the Jeskai Storm deck in the hands of Aura. She played phenomenal. She played it very, very well. And that was great. This deck just seems so powerful.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where the deck goes next, how the meta evolves to compete with this deck, because, yeah, just having it be unanswered forever seems unlikely. There's definitely more counterplay to this than something like Alrund's Epiphany, so it'll be interesting to see in which direction the meta shifts to maybe at least have answers that line up better against Goldspan Dragon. Maybe a few more go blanks too.
Couple of go blanks, noted. Well, we are on to our final matchup of the evening. We're going to be moving on to division number 6, and we've got 2 decks we have not seen yet this evening, starting with, I'm not going to be biased here, but this deck's sweet. I was always a big fan of Bard class, And to see this card come back, because it was something played back before, before the rotation and of like Theros and everything. But this is a sweet Gruul aggro deck with as many Gruul legends as it could fit. And I cannot wait to see this one in action. Do you have any thoughts about this list?
Only that it's super cool. This is Bard class, a card that's in like some play with various aggro combo, legendary shells, and a bunch of new tools for that deck with stuff like Kodama of the First Tree and Mirror Box out of Neon Dynasty. So really excited to see how this take on Gruul aggro works in the new standard. Bryndis, a really accomplished player, playing in the already qualified for the Streets of New Capenna Championship that this VML season qualifies for. So excited to see how the deck she's put together does.
I cannot wait to see this one in action. Like you said, Mirror Box, just all these legends, just get them out there. Cannot wait. Looking forward to this very much. And now on the flip side, we have our first Jeskai Hinata deck of the night. Magma Opus there. One of a card that people won't say is the most powerful card in standard because it's 8 mana, but it does a lot of powerful things, especially if you can make it cheaper.
Yeah, a very different brand of Jeskai combo deck that's trying to combo Hinata with Magma Opus to cost a 2 mana Magma Opus and do a lot of powerful things for a frankly unreasonably low amount of mana. Hinata, particularly powerful in a field full of runes, which there was a lot of last week. Runes, pretty bad against a card that makes all your targeting spells cost 1 more. But also just really good at dealing with creature decks. Unsurprisingly, 2 mana Magma Opus good against creature decks. And you know what? Why not also have the iteration Windfall Goldspan Dragon package in you in the standard version of this deck? Because, I mean, you're playing blue and red, you might as well.
Right? Playing Goldspan Dragon, if you're playing red, right? I suppose that looks like how it works. And I'm excited to see these two decks, very unique decks, face off against each other. So we'll take a look of Sarah England on Jeskai Hinata versus Bryndis on Gruul Aggro. I feel wrong calling it Gruul Aggro. I feel like I should call it like Gruul Bard class, Gruul Legends, the Legend deck. So
Yeah, I like the sound of the Legend deck.
The Legends. And we'll see a quick keep from both of our players here. Both of them starting on 7. Boseiju going to come into play on the side of Bryndis. Pass it back to Sarah. Any thought about these openers here?
Well, I see this open and I'm already just so excited to see the Bard class deck in action because turn 2 you level up that Bard class, cast a free Tagna, and then turn 4 this hand's looking like cast Arlen and cast Helana and Elena for 2 mana each. I'm in. This is all I want to see.
Right, we will see that third land come down. Bard class level up and even able to hold open 1 mana in case Sarah decides to Jawari Disruption here, which I'm sure she will probably pass on.
Yeah, and just it's going to be really hard for the controlling deck to keep up with this auto mana advantage. This Dagnar is fine. It's a 2 mana 3/3. That's whatever. Next turn though, Helana and Elena comes down. Arlen comes down, puts counters on one of the wolves, attacks with the Tagna, gets the back tactics trigger. That's just such a terrifying start. It's so much more powerful than anything the blue-red deck is doing on turn 3.
Yes, I think that we've seen in the past with some of the Bard class decks, they can be very explosive. And it doesn't seem like this hand is going to be any different. We'll see an expressive iteration getting a tap land for Sarah. So the shields are down, it looks like. Going to need to discard. It looks like a pathway will hit the bin, and Esika, God of the Tree, is going to be the draw.
Esika is a really interesting draw. Well, because it lets the deck be so explosive on future turns, it's just a bunch of creatures in play, and next turn they're all going to be making mana, and Bard class is reducing the cost of all their bards. So that's probably just cost like 4, 5, 6 spells next turn. If Bryndis wants to, she may just opt for the the more pedestrian option of just killing Sarah on 5.
Who does that? We've talked about this. You draw cards, play cool cards, but that is enough. And that is a impressive showing from the Bard class deck in the hand of Bryndis. And, Sarah probably realizing, I can't stumble here. This is not a matchup I can be like, ooh, I have to interact on each and every turn, starting as early as maybe turn 2.
Yeah, definitely impressive stuff. And some really interesting sideboard options too, with cards like Inferno of the Starmount showing up. Not a card that's conventionally seen play in Standard for a while just because it's so awkward against Divide by Zero, but now that that's gone, maybe we can see some Inferno against like the Jeskai combo decks. Slightly weaker against something like Hinata specifically because, Magma Opus tapping down your 6/6 for 2 mana, not quite what you want. But yeah, still a lot of hexproof spells. That's 3 safekeepings, 2 snakeskin bells. So definitely good against all the targeted removal from Hinata, and Bryndis clearly very prepared for this matchup.
Looks like it. Looks like she came ready and raring to go as we move over to Sarah's sideboard and take a look at what this Jeskai control has to offer. It looks like Valorous Stance going to move in. Some interest in Negate as well. Is there anything?
It's awkward finding a balance in this matchup because something like Syndiclasm might be good against the small creatures, bad when there's already Bard class out pumping things, something like Negate. Bad inherently against the creature deck, but really good against specific class, like cards like Bard class, Ranger class, all-in, all cards you kind of have to deal with. So sometimes very good, sometimes very bad. And that's part of the strength of decks like this red-green aggro deck, that you have these varied forms of threats that demand different answers, making it hard for control decks to balance having answers that line up well with your threats every game, because they're without doubt some of the time just going to have cards that are clunky against your draw. And there's no real way for the control decks to avoid that.
Yeah, and it looks like Sarah has some interest in like Smoldering Egg. Gonna shave a Magma Opus as well.
Yeah, the plan of Hinata plus Opus is good. It's maybe a little slow against starts like what we saw last game. If you're playing Hinata and like looking to go to Opus and they're like, okay, I put like 15 power on the board, attack you down to 8, all on turn 4, and now I have like 6 different creatures you have to deal with. My Helana and Lena are giving my next threat haste, so you're going to have to deal with that as well. There's stuff like Sarat making things hexproof, so Magma Opus doesn't work against them. Stuff like that's going to be really hard to beat some games, so you definitely need early interaction to go with the Hinata Opus game plan.
Yes, we'll see both players quickly keep their 7 again. Different looking hands, though, this time around. Prismari Command and Demon Bolt, both removal spells in Sarah's hand, and a Goldspan Dragon as well, accompanied by 4 lands here. And we'll see the Demon Bolt get foretold as pass back to Bryndis, who draws a land for turn. And we're looking at starting with the Ranger class this time around. Also a Tovolar, a Kodama, and a Mirror Box in hand. Thoughts on a slightly less explosive hand on the side of Bryndis?
Yeah, and this is showing maybe actually the other side of the deck. Actually doing an excellent job showcasing how this deck is very good at providing multiple modes of threats. Because this game, the hand's all about card advantage. Ranger class is drawing cards, Tovolar is drawing cards, Kodama's getting card advantage. So this is not a game where Sarah can win with 1-for-1 interaction. Sarah needs to go over the top in some way or the other. And having hands like this in combination with the more combo intensive hands really makes it hard for these controlling decks to find answers that reliably work.
It looks like Sarah happy to deploy the Prismari command, just make a treasure and kill that 2/2 wolf token that Ranger class had made, and just able to get this Goldspan Dragon down onto the battlefield and start putting pressure on.
Yeah, this is kind of exactly what Sarah wants to be doing in this spot. Just, well, it's a hand with a lot of card advantage from Bryndis. Sure, just go over the top with Goldspan Dragon. It doesn't matter how many cards Bryndis is going to be drawing when Goldspan Dragon's just going to kill her in a few turns and give Sarah enough mana to ensure that she reliably stays ahead.
Yeah, For Bryndis, no Bard class discount this time around, so kind of stuck with a bunch of 3 drops in hand. And we see Sarah getting ready to fire off that Demon Bolt, targeting that Tovolar, take care of that, and keep the battlefield mostly clear for that Goldspan Dragon to be able to get in once again. And untapping with Otawara in hand, as well as that Fading Hope, like you said, to be able to kind of just keep the threats off the battlefield on Bryndis' side and be able to keep attacking cleanly from Sarah's side.
Yeah, kind of an ideal hand for Sarah because it's just bounce spell after bounce spell for threats from Bryndis, and then she just finishes up with Hall of the Storm Giant. So she's just representing lethal in 2 turns with multiple pieces of interaction. And I've got to imagine that's going to be hard for Bryndis to beat in this start.
Yeah, we see Ranger class leveling up to level 2, but no attacking from Bryndis' side, so not going to really make an impact on the battlefield as it is. Sarah debating on her options here. Can Fading Hope or Otawara the Tovolar? And looks like that is what she is going to do.
Yeah, and what that does here, playing out the Otawara, actually lets her, well, had she not drawn the Goldspan Dragon, she could have activated Hall and still left up Fading Hope. With the Goldspan Dragon drawn, I don't imagine Bryndis has a way out of this.
Right. Why be fancy? See, Sarah's here to just win the game. No,
Yep.
not extra drawn cards. Not Slam Goldspan attack. Goldspan Dragon, a very powerful card on its own. We see Kadama of the West Tree coming down. It is a 4/4 with reach, so can trade with the Goldspan Dragons if Sarah would allow, but we know about that Fading Hope in hand to answer 1, and answering 1 is enough to be able to put lethal in the air.
Notably, Mirror Box letting you play multiple copies even though they're legendary, but with that Hall of the Storm Giants in play and their Fading Hope in hand, Sarah just said extra insurance. It's pretty hard to win from a spot like that. Pretty hard to win when the answers do line up with the threats out of an aggro combo deck like this. It can definitely be hard to keep up with the perfect curve of interaction, Goldspan Dragon to turn the corner, more interaction to make sure you never actually stabilize with all the cards you have. And yeah, Goldspan Dragon, a card that's very good at turning the corner for these controlling decks by just giving you more mana to play with to ensure you stay ahead on board.
Yes, and as both of our players kind of just look over their sideboarding choices as we head into game number 3, both of them seem pretty happy with what they're looking at. And we see a Bard class in the hand of Bryndis to start things off, but 7 cards also starting off with Sarah, including a Smoldering Egg and Expressive Iteration to dig for answers. We'll see if she will be able to find them as Bard class hits the battlefield.
Yeah, interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see what the matchup plays out when both decks kind of have exactly what they're looking for. Sarah has the hand with Bard class into Sarath, which is a threat that's particularly good post-board against Izzet, and Sarah has just Smoldering Egg, which is kind of the perfect post-board card against aggressive decks. It buys you time on the ground, and it makes sure that you can actually turn the corner in a relatively quick manner.
And for those of you at home, Sarath is a legendary creature, human warlock, 2 green for a 3/4. Other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch, and other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. And you pay 1 and tap it to untap another target creature or land you control. So an interesting card, does a lot.
Yeah, most notably here provides Hexproof to tapped creatures from Bryndis. Something that makes this egg maybe not quite as scary and threatening to take over the game immediately. Still a good card, but not just as backbreaking as it might be if there was not something that gave Hexproof.
Yes, as of right now, Sarah not having an answer to this Burgie, which would be able to attack without Smoldering Egg being able to block profitably at this point. Although taking care of Helena and Elena with that Disdainful Stroke was a win in itself, as Sarah decides what the next play is here. Double Expressive Iteration in hand, an Unexpected Windfall, a Mountain, and a Goldspan Dragon. Already having played a land for turn, going to opt to not do any of that and hold up the Unexpected Windfall.
Yeah, I've got to imagine Windfall is the strongest looking play here. It allows Sarah the potential to maybe to flip the smoldering egg to start with, but beyond that, also maybe the potential to remove it with the right draws with the egg triggers. Sorry, she is, I believe, 1 mana off of flipping the smoldering egg, so scratch that. But does still allow her to find a removal spell, and if she casts a removal spell, then flip the egg to threaten wiping Bryndis's board next turn.
All right, and Sareth hits the battlefield as a 4/5. Valor Stance, one of the draws on Sarah's side, but as we see in Bryndis's hand, she has Tamiyo's Safekeeping. So it doesn't look like Sarah feeling confident to go for that Valor Stance quite yet, as Burgi just gets across for 4, bringing Sarah down to 16. Bryndis still at 20, and a pass of the turn back. So some patience there on the side of Sarah.
Yeah, some really good patient play from both players, recognizing there's no need to waste a treasure when there's a Goldspan Dragon coming. And so Sarah doesn't need to Valor Stance that end of turn. And for Bryndis, recognizing that as long as she keeps her Sarah alive, she's probably in at least fine shape. So it's better to hold up the Tamiyo Safekeeping for the Sarah than play out something like the Mirror Box or the Kodama, both of which were options for her in this spot.
Yeah, and it looks like that Tamiyo Safekeeping will come into play here. It's a 4/5, but now Sarah has 2 4/4 attackers in the air. Bryndis is at 22, and every instant or sorcery that Sarah casts is a shock from that Ashmouth Dragon.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether, at this point, it's basically a race, and whether Sarah's deck can keep up with this aggro deck. That Tagna's probably going to make things a little more difficult, being essentially not even a 0 mana 2/2 or 0 mana 3/3, but a +1 mana 3/3 thanks to the Burgi in play.
Yes, and we see Burgi making that mana, Targnar coming on down, and those are some big old attackers on the side of Bryndis here. And that's a very healthy attack for 10. And now remember the Targnar and the Kodama, as long as the Sareth is on the battlefield, will have hexproof as long as they are untapped.
Yeah, and Kodama very notably having reach, so that makes actually finding lethal in this spot for Sarah a little harder. Though notably, Bryndis is at 14. One of those creatures is getting in, so that's 4 damage going to face. That's 3 spells in hand, so that's 6 more damage going to face. That's a Spikefield Hazard, so that's 7 damage going to face. So that's 11 damage Sarah has right now. So if she's able to find some combination of either 2 spells or 1 more Spikefield Hazard, she actually can just win this then.
Oh, and we see Hinata is the draw here as well. And with Expressive Iteration, you get to do some digging. So Sarah's going to start digging. That Ashmouth Dragon, 2 upstairs. Bryndis down to 12. What is Sarah going to find here? Will it be enough to seal this up in game number 3? It looks like land.
Land,
So,
not quite what she's looking for on the spot. She probably wanted at least 1 land to be able to actually cast a spell she draws.
yes.
But second land, not ideal. She needs to find 2 more spells off this or 1 more Spikefield Hazard.
Yeah, it looks like taking a look at the battlefield, looking at what the 3 cards are here from this Expressive Iteration. Now, Spikefield Hazard is a bolt, like you said. It's exactly what it is. It's just 3 damage, any one target. Could bring Bryndis down to 7, and attack could bring Bryndis down to 3. Is Sarah going to be able to find enough to finish the game off here? Or is a favor going to drop back over to Bryndis' side? We'll find out shortly after we see what cards are here in this Expressive Iteration. Huge turn, huge decision on the side of Sarah.
Yeah, and notably, I mentioned 2 spells or 1 Spikefield Hazard, but there's actually a third option that might give... there's a third and maybe a 4th option that might give Sarah lethal here. if she draws a Goldspan Dragon, she can Spike Field her own Goldspan, play out another Goldspan, shock Bryndis for 2, and that gives 8 damage. And if she finds a Magma Opus, she can play out Hinata, attack with both her creatures, Spike Field her Goldspan, and then use that mana to Magma Opus off the Hinata for lethal damage.
It looks like so many options. We'll see what Sarah ends up hitting, and it looks like Goldspan Dragon is a hit here. Otawara is on the side there, but cannot channel if it is not in hand, I believe.
Yeah, not ideal, though the Spike Field has a plus Goldspan would still provide just lethal here. So Sarah not out of this.
Yes, we'll see if Sarah sees the line. Oh, and checking out the Hinata. Unable to cast Hinata at this
The treasure,
time.
I believe, gives her enough mana to cast Hinata at this point.
It does. It does. My apologies. And just going to cast Hinata and pass the turn back. A second Sareth on the side of Bryndis, which is, hey, not a bad thing because Mirror Box is in play. So it's going to come down as a 6/7 as Mirror Box will also pump the original Sareth and just going to get in team attack Targnar.
Yeah, and the Sareth's giving Death Touch and the Kodama giving Trample means that that's lethal there.
Yes, so Targnar would be able to double its power toughness. That was quite an impressive showing from the Bard class. Honestly, a good showing from either side. But that Bard class deck, I'm telling you, the Legends deck, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But
Yeah.
good games to both of our players. And we'll see Gruul Aggro take that one down 2-1. Good game, Sarah England. Good game to Bryndis taking it down.
Yeah, really cool, innovative deck from Bryndis. I had not really had Gruul Aggro on my radar for Standard, but that deck definitely putting up a powerful performance and really well piloted too.
And it looks like a lot of fun to play besides, so I might have to take a little looky loo at that one. But unfortunately, as far as looky loos go, we're out of things to look at for the evening. But thank you all for joining us tonight. Be sure to give us a follow here, twitch.tv/VMLMTG, over on Twitter, twitter.com/VMLMTG, and over on YouTube as well. So you'll know when we go live. It should be every week, Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We'll be back next week with some more awesome gameplay from some more amazing people of marginalized genders within the Magic community. And we'll get a little bit closer to playoffs. And again, a big thank you to NRG Series, Wizards of the Coast, and GLHF. If you haven't checked out Good Luck High Five, their podcast, they are phenomenal. Megan and Maria, they're just wonderful people, so fun and so funny, so amazing. Make sure you check them out. A big up to them for joining our sponsor team this season. A big thank you to our admin team. A big thank you to the players. A big thank you to, by the way, today is Hayu's birthday. So if y'all haven't, go harass Hayu on Twitter. Wish her a happy birthday. Tell her she's phenomenal because the VML would not be the VML without her. Big ups, as always, to our amazing producer, Phoebe, who runs an amazing show every single week, in and out. I don't know what we would do without her. So big thank you to her at Code Indigo on Twitch. And a thank you to all you viewers out there. And a huge thank you again to my wonderful co-commentators tonight, Arya, Karamchandani. Thank you so much. Anybody you want to thank or say goodnight to?
Well, thank you for making casting so fun and easy as always.
Listen, now I'm ready to go draw cards, eat cakes and ham sandwiches and all that good stuff because we've been talking about food and drawing cards and all this sounds like fun. But thank you for making this cast so easy, so wonderful, and so fun every single week. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good night.
Bye.